This brings me to the fourth strand of aristocratic culture, the possibility of another kind of immortality, immortality achieved through literature and art. What do we mean by literature in this period? Well, we're talking about literature as a kind of writing, not just literature generally, but writing which is personal and which is occasional. That is, it's written for a specific occasion in response to something that happens, whether it's somebody's birthday and you write a poem to congratulate them, whether you write somebody a letter to say something to them, whether you write an inscription in response to an event. It's done for the occasion. And the assumption is that literature, particularly poetry, is an authentic representation of how you yourself, the writer, responded to the events which the poem is about. There's a psychological model that lies behind this. And that is, and it's fairly old in China by this time, and that is that we have selves that are in many ways inchoate. They're not well defined. Each one of us is individual. Things happen in the world, and through our perception, we become aware of them. And it stirs up something inside of us, and we respond. The quality of our response, which may be selfish and evil or good and humane, reveals who we are as people. And one of the early arguments we see in China is that it's precisely because people are like this that we need ritual. We need to tell people how to behave in certain situations. That same idea gets transferred to literature, with the notion that we need to know how to respond in writing to the various occasions we confront in life, that there are rules and norms of expression, and yet there's a great room, far more room in literature for individuality and creativity than there is in the conduct of ritual. And so writers, in some sense, are engaged with the world, responding in normative ways, but also in individual ways, writing in genres, in modes that are widely accepted and are now being anthologized for the first time. This sudden flowering of literary art begins in the 3rd century AD, and we have writers who begin to talk about what it means and why it is so important. And they make the point that it is through writing that we show as an individual that we are in tune with the cultural tradition and the texts of the past. That by writing we're creating something that can be enduring. In some sense, within ourselves, we're replicating the processes of heaven and earth. What we write reveals our personal character. It proves your qualities, your sharpness, your intelligence, your moral qualities as well. And above all, when your writing is read and transmitted, and we will be reading writings that have been read and transmitted, you're gaining a new kind of immortality, where you will be remembered for what you did, for what you wrote, that it doesn't depend upon your political station, does not depend upon having power, but that you can create something that will be enduring and will live forever and will affect others. This happens in calligraphy as well, and soon it will happen in painting. We're going to have a chance to talk more about this in a minute with Professor Tian Xiaofei, who's an authority on medieval literature and culture. But let me sum up what we've been talking about today. We see in the medieval period in aristocratic culture a concern with the self, a concern with me, an interest in transcending the limits of nature, of time, of place, but also of being spontaneous and in accord with one's own character, not necessarily conforming, but trying to be oneself in all ways. And that suggests that we've reached a moment when people are beginning to have the idea that the self, the individual, can be more important than family, can be more important than state. And perhaps this was not entirely a new idea in Chinese history, but it had never been, I think, so popular. With that, let's meet Professor Tian.